he should know that the defendant is already convicted of a federal crime. If he made bond in the state court, he would be immediately revoked and picked up by the feds. As far as the evidence goes, we are hearing what the DA says they have. And I've got to say, my saying is saying it doesn't make it so. We want to, as defense attorneys, we want to see it, feel it, smell it, see if it's evidence, see if it's admissible evidence. It certainly does sound like the defense attorney, who from my research is very experienced, Ms. Miner, will do all the things that a good attorney should do. Number one, speak to their client, find out what's going on, try to answer through him these allegations of this seemingly damning evidence at this point.
I have one quick question for you, and I only have about 30 seconds, and I need you to answer this. We're all wondering if it's going to be murder one or murder two, because right now it's just murder. But with that Google search on the 27th of December, best date for a man to get a divorce, what are your thoughts?
Well, again, I can't put too much on the wording. This is going to be an accumulation of evidence rather than one key point, with the most of it being dependent upon the forensics, the blood, cell phones, computer evidence, possible murder weapons. That's where this case is going to turn.
Yeah, I'll bet. And I can't wait to have you back to talk about this more. You certainly got the years under your belt, so you know a thing or two about the business of trying to defend in a really tough case. Steve Farese, thank you. So appreciate it, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you, ma'am.
When we come back, I have some really interesting news on this that we've been covering for several months now. Brian Kohlberger's apartment search warrant has been unsealed, and there is some curious stuff indeed. I'm going to tell you what was found in this apartment.
Of shell companies, so we're going to have a system in place to scrutinize this. But why would we want them buying farmland? They had very little farmland in the United States even 10 years ago. Now they have significant holdings, not as much in Florida, but you do have it in other parts of the country. Why would we want the CCP to own land near a military base or own critical infrastructure? Right. So we're looking for a flat ban, and so we're going to work with the Florida legislature to get that done. Tucker, American policymakers for a generation have been empowering the CCP. They said it would end up working out. China would become a democracy. In fact, this is a very serious threat to our country. Why would we want them to have even more influence over American society than they already do?
So very short question, Governor. These two things, using the National Guard to protect the borders and preventing a hostile foreign nation from buying up farmland, these are things a lot of other states can be doing but aren't doing. Were they hard for you to do? Is this super hard?
Well, the National Guard we control. I mean, we're putting resources. You know, we have a big budget surplus, Tucker, so we can do that, and people are very happy. You know, we're taking care of the vessels that are landing. Otherwise, the homeowners would have to pay $2,500 a pop. So we're stepping in where the federal government's failing. I think more states can do it, Tucker, but honestly, we should not have to be doing this. The federal government should be taking care of the immigration issue, and they should be taking care of the CCP issue. With this administration, we know neither of those two things are going to happen.
We're grateful you're doing it. Thank you, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida. Appreciate it. We'll be right back.
Vaccine. PRES, a rare potentially fatal brain condition, may be possible. Some serious allergic reactions and lung inflammation can occur.
Feel unstoppable. Ask your doctor how lasting remission can start with Stelara. Janssen can help you explore cost support options.
You can manufacture a whole new way of manufacturing. Disrupt buying habits before they disrupt your business. And fuel the search for what comes next. So, what are you waiting for?
A must in your medicine cabinet. Less sick things.
Cold Zycam's the #1 cold shortening brand.
Highly recommended.
Zycams love Zycam's unique zinc formula.
It shortens colds.
Zycam zinc that cold.
Hey man, you could save hundreds for safe driving with Liberty Mutual. They customize your car insurance, so you only pay
what you need. Woo! We gotta go again. Only pay for what you need. Liberty, 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 liberty.
You planned the perfect thank you with the promotional product experts at 4imprint who attended to every detail. Did you get it right? You certainly did. For the right products printed perfectly, go to 4imprint.com. 4imprint, for certain. Drive Time has a big announcement. An even easier way to buy a car. You make the deal yourself.
I made the deal myself.
It lets you customize the real down payment and monthly payment of the car you want to buy.
It's a Drive Time Real Deal Maker.
Get the real deal at drivetime.com. Light up your space with the tabletop fire pit from Sharper Image. The smokeless fire pit that creates soothing warmth and magical decor. Tabletop fire pit is made from reinforced concrete that is safe and heat resistant. Now enjoy s'mores with the family. Experience fireside conversations with friends, or just relax in your cozy space. Then cover it until next time. Order now at firepitoffer.com and you can save 50% on a second tabletop fire pit from Sharper Image.
Do you have an idea for an invention, but you don't know what to do next? Call InventHelp. They've been helping inventors for 35 years. InventHelp has helped over 10,000 inventors get patents. You can meet with an InventHelp representative who will keep your idea confidential and explain the invention process step by step. And InventHelp's databank includes over 9,000 companies who have agreed to review new ideas. Take action and get the help you need from InventHelp.
800-712-8387.
Now, more than ever, all U.S. veterans need your help. If you have an old car, truck, or van, you can donate it today and help them. And they'll come pick it up for free. Plus, the money raised helps our nation's disabled veterans and their families. Call the number on your screen right now. Within a few days, we'll come and tow it away for free, running or not. And the proceeds greatly help U.S. veterans. So please call right now.
I am coming to you live from the police department in Cohasset, Massachusetts. But if you watch our show pretty regularly, you know that we were doing hour-long specials on the Idaho murder case for 2 months. And I want to give you an update to something we have been waiting for quite some time. It's the unsealing of the search warrant. The reason that the police were able to get into Brian Kohberger's apartment in Pullman, Washington. Okay, here are some of the things that came out of that search warrant, what they actually found when they unsealed this. One disposable black glove, receipts from Walmart and Marshalls. That's going to be important at some point. I can't tell you why now. Dust container from the vacuum cleaner. That I want to know about because there's allegations that he cleaned his car. He may have cleaned his rug. But if the dust container is still full, everything you pick up from the rug or the car is still in that container. Fascinating. 12 possible hairs. One Fire TV stick, and I know for a fact you can do internet searches and social media search with a Fire TV stick. Also, a possible animal hair strand. It would be fascinating to know if that is potentially Murphy the dog. One computer tower. One item with a dark red spot. That's all they'll say about that. 2 cuttings from an uncased pillow with reddish brownish stain, and then mattress covers. And they listed as the reason for the search, King Road residents had significant amount of blood from victims, including spatter, cast off. Believed it was transferred to Kohberger, who they believe returned to his apartment after the killings on November 13th. They also searched his office because you know he was a TA, right? But they didn't seize anything there, which is pretty fascinating. There is this also from People magazine that Brian Kohberger sent a series of messages, DMs, to one of the victims on Instagram before the murders, but we don't know which. We just know it was one of the females. That is it for tonight, live from Cohasset, Massachusetts. Thanks for being with me. I'm Ashley Banfield. See you tomorrow.
Hey everybody, I'm Chris Cuomo. We are live, so let's get after it. It's Wednesday. You know what that means? The Boar is back. Bill O'Reilly, the one and only. And get your phones out, because once you get to hear what Bill and I think about a very important issue to you, we want to hear what your say is. 1-844-968-7720. Then, talented director of photography, Helena Hutchins. tragically killed on the set of the Alec Baldwin Rust. You remember this? Well, the day we've been waiting for comes tomorrow. Whom, if anyone, will be charged in connection with her fatal shooting? Could Alec Baldwin be charged? I spoke to him recently. You're going to hear what he thinks. And Brian Walsh, the man accused, now charged of murdering his missing wife in Massachusetts. The theory is he killed her, he chopped her up, and incinerated her body. The proof of it will shock you on what they found on his internet searches alone. Plus, the search warrant released today detailing what was found in Idaho murder suspect Brian Kohberger's apartment. What is in there that is of interest? At least 3 things, and we will go through them. Also, how about some food for thought? A little marker here of something that should matter. It really doesn't that much anymore based on polling and perception. The war in Ukraine was supposed to last about 10 days. Just today, another dozen killed, this time in a chopper tragedy. Did you see any of the footage of it? Horrible. Some kids were killed. Why? Because when the chopper went down, it went down in a school. How did it happen? We don't know. Innocents dying in a situation that makes no sense. It's a metaphor for Ukraine's war with Russia, which is now approaching its 1-year anniversary. How is something that was supposed to last 10 days gone so long? How does something that America and so many power players have sworn to stop keep getting worse? Even with both sides hiding the realities of human loss for morale and strategic purposes. Here is the war by the numbers, okay? On the Ukraine side, at least 18,000 dead and injured. Many observers will tell you it's far more. Again, they hide the reality. I oppose this position, by the way, but it's not my position to take, because I think the more you knew the reality, the more receptive you'd be, but they are worried about morale. So 18,000 at a minimum, okay? There are stories on the ground there and reports of gang rape in ways we haven't seen, in modern history, just straight up war crimes. 433 kids at least are among the dead. Twice that many kids have been injured. Most estimates place Russian losses much higher, maybe as high as around 100,000 dead. Reports of them now recruiting prisoners, forcing people to go to war, and of course, committing big-time war crimes once they get there. Ukraine has been gutted of everything but its will to fight. Women and men have had to flee. Men were ordered to stay. Power is out in so many places. Commerce is all but at a stop. And it's winter. And although it's almost kind of latitudinally the same place as we, it's way nastier over there. The cruelest season on their calendar. 1/3 of Ukrainians have been displaced since the beginning of the war. Over 7 million people have just been spread out around the European diaspora. You got about 13 million that are stuck within Ukraine. Houses where they live, where they work, not available for them anymore. The reason the war grinds on, the biggest reason, no one knows how to stop it. Our support here, it was huge in the initial months. Remember all you guys with your blue and yellow flags and I stand with Ukraine. But time is a very tough measure when it comes to war and support, especially when it's not in your backyard. And public sentiment has dropped, especially when you put a price tag on it. From January 2022 to November, U.S. aid to Ukraine, $68 billion. By current standards, all but the Trumpy right and really the Fox fringe, they are against us being in Ukraine, but for odd reasons. The rest of us, though, about 2 in 3, and by modern standards, I mean, that is a huge number of really, cooperation on this issue. 2 out of 3 of us say, keep helping. Also in December 2022, because of that 2 out of 3 number, Congress passed another $47 billion in support to Ukraine. But will that end the war? No. How long can we keep this up? How long can Ukraine? How much does it matter how long it goes to our interests? And how does it end? We had President Zelensky on recently, and I asked him about exactly this. Here's what he said. Sabotage. Sabotage. I promise he was talking. And he said that it has to be an American concern because they are not the last domino. They are the first. We're still working out the bugs here, but that's the point, okay? So what is the American perspective? Let's hope for sound, because we have a man who is very worth listening to. Former Republican Senator, Defense Secretary under President Clinton, Bill Cohen. It's good to see you, sir.
Chris, great to be with you.
It's even better to hear you. So we're getting close to a year now, right? February will mark a year of this war. Do you believe there is an end in sight?
Not immediately, no, but I think we can help bring it to an end sooner by giving more capability to the Ukrainians. They need more firepower. They need more, well, Bradley fighting vehicles they'll get, but they need Abram tank, for example. I think that we ought to consider that as well. The Germans have said they're not going to give up their Leopard tanks unless we're willing to go with the Abrams. I'd say, okay, let's make a deal. We'll start training on the Abrams. You start providing weapons as well. But we have to put Russia's interests at risk. We have to put it at risk now that Crimea, by way of example, we have to put at risk wherever they are firing into Ukraine, by air, by sea, by land.
So
every one of those places ought
so
to be
wait a
a
minute,
target.
you're saying, well, you can't mean that entirely, because Crimea, okay, but what if they're coming from Belarus? What if they're coming from inside Russian territory in Russia and firing? Are you saying to fire back into Russian territory?
I say that if you're firing and killing me daily in great numbers, and you're asking me not to fire back, I think that's pretty outrageous. And what's happened is the Russians have had sanctuary. We're saying, we're going to kill you, but you can't fire back at us. You can try to defend against us, but you can't attack us. I think that's a losing game for the Ukrainians. They have to be able to put the Russian troops at risk wherever they are attacking Ukraine. If that means Russian territory, so be it.
Is the guy who is in your job now in this administration saying the same thing? Because when we spoke to the president, Mr. Secretary, he was, no, we're not going to attack them in Russia. We just want our land back. We just want our land back. You know, President Zelensky is very disciplined on that point, and I have to believe it's because that's what he's been told has to happen in order for him to keep getting support. Don't go any farther than your own border.
Well, the problem with that is that the Ukrainians continue to die. Just this week, we saw an attack on an apartment building in which 45 people were killed, 6 children among them. This goes on day after day. And what's happening is the Russians are able to fire from various platforms in various parts, including the Black Sea, including Crimea, including elsewhere. And we're saying the Ukrainians can't fire back and attack them. I think that's unfair, and frankly, it will put Ukraine at much greater risk of losing this thing.
So we started the interview by saying, you know, how much longer you think it's going to go. I mean, this isn't really bad for Russia. I mean, there are all these horror stories about how they have to recruit prisoners and this and that, but they haven't really broached any subject about wanting to come to the table. Do you think that this could be the state of play for the entire year?
I think the Russians want this to be a war of attrition, and a war of attrition in the long run works against the Ukrainians, just by virtue of the size of the Russians, the proximity that they are to the Ukrainian sources. That's a losing battle for the Ukrainians if they are not allowed to really take the battle to the Russians who are attacking them. So I think a war of attrition runs against the interests of the Ukrainians. And that's why we need right now to put as much firepower in the hands of the Ukrainians as we possibly can. Train them, take whatever time we need to train them, make them familiar with the equipment that will be helpful in going after the Russians and killing more Russians and sending them back home to Russia. And that will help end the war as far as the Ukrainians are concerned.
It's interesting. I understand the logic behind it. It certainly would meet with a lot of approval on the Ukraine side, but that is a very different argument that America has been making, right? Even in terms of the weapons they give. These are defensive weapons. They're not offensive weapons. We're not extending it. Obviously, we've been slow on our help because we don't want to escalate it. But I understand where you're coming from, and certainly the human toll is mounting, whether we're paying attention to it or not.
Chris, is the old expression, you don't want to poke a beer and antagonize a beer if you can cross a bear too, but a bear. a Russian bear. But if the Russian bear is in your home, you need more than a broom to get him out. You need a shotgun, and you have to give the equivalent of those shotguns to the Ukrainians, and we have to do it now and not wait until next year or the year thereafter as this grinds on and less support is forthcoming to the Ukrainians.
I'm going to keep testing that idea with other people who are in the business of keeping America safe, because I think it's going to be a little controversial. To extend the metaphor, it will be, do you chase the bear back into its cave? And I'll also come back to you, Mr. Secretary, because I'm going to head to Ukraine probably next month, and I want to talk to you before about what I should try to make sure I get to show people when I get there. Mr. Secretary, all the best. Thank you very much.
Anytime, Chris. Thank you. Bye.
Coming up, Bill O'Reilly is back in the ring. He's very upset about what's happening with drugs in this country, and he's right. And he says Mexico is too big a part of the problem to do nothing about it, and Biden has been too soft on Mexico. And he's right again. The question is, what needs to change? He says he's a problem solver. Time for a dose of perspective. Plus, tomorrow, we'll finally find out if anyone will be charged with the fatal shooting in connection with it on Alec Baldwin's movie set, Rust. I spoke to him about it earlier this year. Hear what he had to say.
Cynthia, there's only one question to ask here. Who put a live round in the gun? That's it.
Every aspect of our lives. Of course, they will be exempt from all of it. They'll be exempt from the mandates, the restrictions, the rules that they write for the rest of us. And one more point, as you said, Sean, if they believed a word they were saying, they wouldn't be flying private jets, they wouldn't be cruising around in private yachts, they wouldn't have 15 mansions, and they wouldn't be ignoring China, the #1 polluter on planet Earth.
Why does China get a pass? In the Paris Accords, why is China? Why is India? Why are they declared developing nations when they're the biggest polluters on the planet? Devin Nunes, last question.
Look, Sean, this is the thing. Back in 2007, when I was in Congress, I remember the Democrats took over, and they started out on this climate hysteria back at in those days. And we had a private meeting. It was off the record, or behind closed doors. They didn't want to do it publicly because at that time they were embarrassed to talk about this global warming nonsense. And I asked some of the people there, well, look, you say the oceans are going to rise. How much? How many feet? When's it going to happen? And I remember the gentleman said, by 2020, it's possible that New York City, Florida could be underwater, and we would have to spend billions of dollars building up all of the properties, all of the docks, all the boat docks, et cetera, et cetera. Now, look, I'm pretty sure it's 2023. I'm actually down in Miami, Florida right now, and the ocean seems to be the same level it was last year when I was here.
Yeah. Devin Nunes, thank you. Stephen Miller, thank you. We appreciate it. All right, it is now time for the Hannity Hot Seat, and tonight we want to address Joe Biden's outright dishonesty after promising not to raise taxes on you, the middle class. He then hiked taxes on all of your 401ks, increased taxes on gas, oil and coal. He also taxed people's 401ks on top of corporate taxes, $250 some odd billion. Corporations don't pay taxes. He had to defend that and many other positions of Joe Biden is Leslie Marshall. So Leslie, take a look there. I have video of Joe Biden. Let me play it for you, promising not to raise taxes on anyone making less than $400,000 a year. Your president made this promise.
Let me say that again, be crystal clear. No one making less than $400,000 a year will pay a single additional penny in tax for all these things that were in the Build Back Better plan.
Now, I'll put it up on the screen again. $6.5 billion natural gas tax, $12 billion crude oil tax, $1.2 billion coal tax, $74 billion stock tax, $225 billion corporate income tax hike. Corporations don't pay taxes. Intellectual honesty time, Leslie. Known you a long time. Did Joe Biden lie to the American people? Because those taxes affect every American that heats their home or fills up gas in their car. Did he lie?
No, because what the president said, and I quote, he said he would seek to impose an increase in taxes on oil and gas corporations who did not reinvest the profits. And if you don't reinvest the profits, we saw what happened, right, Sean? We saw years of lack of reinvestment.
I just
and
played
these
the tape.
huge corporations pocketing the profits while the
You
American
promised
people
not to
saw
raise
corporations
taxes.
increase gas, increase oil prices, and that's what hurt the American people.
Leslie?
It wasn't Biden, it wasn't Democrats, wasn't
Let
even
me read
Republicans.
it to you.
It was these rich corporations.
No one making less than $400,000 a year will pay a single additional penny in tax for all these things that were in, and he said it 100 times. So you're just going to go with the answer and just outright lie to our audience? Because that's not true what you're saying.
No, I'm not outright. You know me very well. I'm very honest. I'm not outright lying. Here's
I think
what
you
happens.
believe it, but that doesn't mean that it's totally false.
If I tax you, Sean, if I tax you and you pass that taxation onto your customers, am I taxing them?
Anybody that fills up their gas
you
tank
charge them to keep your greed and your wealth going.
My
And that's
greed.
what these huge corporations do.
Anybody
and have
that
done,
fills
and
up
even
their
during
gas tank will pay more because of this tax. Anyone that heats their home will pay more. Let's move on to the next question here. All right, Biden called Trump irresponsible for his handling of documents at Mar-a-Lago, and President Trump did have the power to declassify. There's no set way to do it. Joe Biden didn't as VP. By Biden's own standard, was he irresponsible? Simple question.
Look, I said this when the documents were found by former President Trump, and I think the same, and I don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican. We obviously have a huge problem here, whether you're president or a vice president, with the process or lack of process for documents leaving the White House, leaving offices, and where these boxes end up going. That's a huge problem. We're seeing that. The American people are aware of that.
Okay,
I think there's
is he a
hypocrisy here,
hypocrite?
quite
Is
frankly,
he a
Sean, on both
hypocrite?
sides. On both
Is he a
sides.
hypocrite?
You have Republicans very angry, wanting a special
Leslie, you
counsel.
gotta work
The
with me
special
here,
counsel's
Leslie. We don't have
appointed, and
time.
that's not good enough.
I don't have time for a filibuster. Is he a hypocrite? Yes or no?
No, I don't think he's a hypocrite.
Okay, next question.
I don't. I think he was being judgmental toward the actions of the former president and not aware.
Next
It's like a library book. You find the library book and you didn't know that you had it, you return it to the library. Is that what happened with the former president? I think it's
Last
a different
question
thing.
before
The library
my
calls and
blood
says, "Hey,
pressure goes
you got
up
the
even
books.
higher.
Bring them back."
Biden campaigned on having a fully transparent administration. So why won't they release the visitor logs for Biden's Delaware home? And why did Karine Jean-Pierre tell the public that the search was completed before more documents were discovered? Is by him not releasing the visitor logs, he spent 40% of his presidency so far outside the White House. Isn't that hypocritical? Isn't that the opposite, the antithesis of transparent? Last question, yes or no?
I don't think it's hypocritical. First of all, there's a difference between the White House visitor logs and his residence. The resident visitor logs, he technically doesn't have to maintain and release those logs, but I think they should be released. Absolutely put that out there to have full transparency. If you remember, the former president did not release the logs from the White House of his visitors at that time.
Leslie Marshall, good to see you. Thank you for joining the hot seat. When we come back, we have an investigative report. John Solomon, his new exclusive, shocking details of Hunter Biden's business ventures. Also, Karine Jean-Pierre, another bad day. We've got it all on tape. Doesn't make her look good. Senator Ted Cruz will react. And don't forget, you get the last word tonight with Last Call. Straight ahead.
A flood of narcotics never before seen to enter this country. He is a partner with the drug cartels. Biden does not understand this, does not care about it, and so it continues. Some stats, because I know News Nation is a fact-driven operation.
Especially if you're going to call the president a narco. But continue.
Listen to the facts, Cuomo, then you can get wise after that. 44% of the Mexican population lives in poverty. So of course they're going to come to the United States hoping they won't be poor. In 2021, 44,000 human beings were murdered in Mexico. 44,000. In the United States, with 200 million more people, homicide was 23,000.
And that number sounds
added
low
to the
that you have
44,
about Mexico. That's low.
well, these are the numbers that come out of the United States law enforcement
No,
people.
not our numbers. We count that fairly accurately. I'm talking about Mexico's numbers. Life is cheap there, Bill.
Well,
I bet you the number.
23,000 people in 23,000 people went missing. So added together, it's 67,000 human beings murdered or missing. Don't go snorkeling in Acapulco Bay. So you have down there a situation that's totally out of control. And those people make their money in America. That's where they make their money.
And they're killing
And
them
our
too.
president
They just killed a half dozen people right over the border.
Hundreds of thousands.
No, but I'm
Hundreds
saying
of
they
thousands
literally
of
came in and shot up 6 American people on American soil, showing a new brazen attitude because they have the best product they've ever had in the existence of illicit drugs. Fentanyl is the cheapest. It's completely
We don't have to
synthetic.
convince anybody watching. We don't have to convince anybody watching tonight.
I don't know that people
That
are
this is
afraid enough. You know, they think that, oh, this is the latest thing. It's like meth. It's like this. It is not. I'm telling you, I can't tell you how many parents are having conversations with their kids once they get educated where, I mean, whoever thought you'd have this conversation with a teenage kid? I know you're going to smoke weed, okay? Let me figure out where to get it because God forbid you get this stuff sprinkled with fentanyl, you will die. You know, usually we just have a hard no on it. Can't be that way anymore. Kids are dying.
That's the retail problem. But I want you to understand the big picture, how dangerous Mexico is to America. If you combine the out of control migration with the narcotics, you have a problem far beyond the jihadists. So why is the President of the United States and the corporate media ignoring the problem? Why? Because it makes Biden and the Democrats look bad. Now, Trump at least did something. He forced Obrador.
Yeah, he did more than
forced
something.
Obrador.
Yeah, he did more than something. His best foreign policy.
The military on the border.
Trump's best foreign policy decision. Okay? And probably, you know, I'm surprised he didn't blow his horn more about this at the time, frankly, because I was covering it when he was doing it. Him threatening the tariff against Mexico made the difference to Obrador, certainly with migration. On drugs, I don't know that we have a solution. The people that I'm talking to.
Oh, you got a solution. You have a solution.
All right, let me hear
Trump used it. Trump used it, but then took the tariff over this. The Patriot Act, passed after 9/11, allows the American government to define a terrorist group. Once the group is defined as a terrorist, we can kill them. If you read my book, Killing the Killers, that's how we went after the Iranians.
Right, but there is a legal
the
problem.
Somalians, all the others.
There's a legal issue.
Wait. The Patriot Act gives the United States the right to designate terror groups.
Yes.
If they designate it, the Biden administration, the cartels as terror groups, we can drone them, we can send special forces in to kill them. That's what Trump used with Obrador. He told him straight out, I'm going to do this.
Right.
And Obrador said, please don't do it. We'll give you the tariff you want. And that's how that deal came down.
I think that Obrador is actually more worried about the tariff than having American military assist his federales. But there is a legal issue. Now, I'm not saying that I like this legal issue. I'm just telling you, talking to people who practice this area of law, we have a specific definition in the Patriot Act and in our own federal statutes about what it is to be a terror organization. And all of these RICO groups, you know, which is what the cartels are, they check every box except one. You're supposed to say that what they do is to forward a political agenda. Now, you could stretch it and say they're killing public officials, and that is sending a political message. That's what you'd have to do to make that case. But let's not forget why Trump didn't do it. He didn't do it because if you call them terroristic organizations, you create an entirely new and valid avenue for asylum. Because running from a terroristic organization is different than just running from crime. But I have one other point before we go to break that I want you to opine on. I hear you on the drugs. I'm with you. Dusty and I talk about with him how to cover it differently all the time. We're planning a trip down there to do things that people haven't seen. But I see migration differently. And I want to take this on at the top of the next block because I think you're fair to go after Mexico about fentanyl. They are the home base. but not migration because it's a regional issue. And and that's why things have gotten worse, because the Biden administration has done something nobody's blamed them for yet. I'll lay it out at the top of the next block. Bill will opine, and then it's all about you talking to us. Stay with us.
We're seeing a record number of migrants, so many young babies, not toddlers, babies.
This is what President Biden should have seen yesterday. Mutation has been there every single day.
It could be some time before a solution is found.
Allie Bradley, you are our eyes and ears at the border. Thank you for that exclusive.
Sir, you won't faze me. Unlike Zyrtec, Allegra won't make me drowsy.
Allegra starts working 2 times faster than Claritin. So take Allegra before allergy symptoms take over you. And Allegra Highs works from the